short video today on basically for beginners on what to feed their fish. There's a lot of questions out there on what do I feed my killifish, how do I feed them, when do I feed them, and so I kind of want to go over some of the different foods that are out there available. So when you first get your fish or you first get your eggs and they hatch, a good first food to feed is something very, very small. So Hikari puts out a food called First Bites. This is a real fine ground up fish food that works really well. And that's an option. Everybody does this differently. I always like to make that a point because there's so many different ways of doing your foods. Another way is doing brine shrimp. So if you have a small brine shrimp hatchery, you can make your own brine shrimp eggs. You put them in the hatchery, and after about 24 to, depending on temperature, depending on your water temperature inside your container, anywhere between 24 and 36 hours, the baby brine shrimp will start to hatch out. It's best if you feed your fry with the freshly hatched brine shrimp, so that the egg sac on the brine shrimp is still nice and plump and full. More protein by doing it this way. If you wait a day or two, most of the baby brine shrimp will start to die off anyways, and they're less nutritional value in the brine shrimp. So brine shrimp is a good beginner's food. There's a lot of different sources that you can buy your brine shrimp from, or your brine shrimp eggs. Frozen food, you can also do baby brine shrimp that's frozen. It comes in a little package like this. San Francisco Bay brand puts out a really nice baby brine shrimp. Live foods. In the live food section, we have what's called microworms. Microworms are very small worms that basically feed off of the bacteria in oatmeal or rice, or you can mix a lot of different stuff. Oatmeal and yeast works really well. And you can buy different cultures from different people online. Then there's as your fish start to grow, you want to move into a little bigger food. So what we have is these are called white worms. These are called grindle worms. Grindle worms can stay out into the and those are not grindle worms. These are my grindle worms. These can stay out at room temperature. They do best at about 75 degrees. Trying to keep your soil moist, not too wet and not too dry. And so you can see in this culture how well the worms are doing. I feed these on a little bit of dog food. You can use bread soaked in yogurt, bread soaked in milk. There's just a ton load of different things that you can use on these. Again, these are a great beginner's food because they slowly multiply, and you can just scrape the worms off of the cover plate there and rinse them off really good, and then feed them to your baby fry or your adult fish even. So that's another food. Then as your fish start to grow and get a little bit bigger, live food is always better for killifish. So if you have access to or you can find mosquito larvae, mosquito larvae is an excellent food for your fish. You can also collect ants, and there's a lot of other live foods, wingless fruit flies, daphnia, vinegar eels, banana eels, or banana worms. So there's a lot of different live foods available for your killifish. But for beginners, the microworms are a big hit. Baby brine shrimp, after you hatch them. First bites. Anything that's microscopically small works really well. Then as your fish start to grow a little bit more, you can go back to using frozen brine shrimp. Just add a little bit of water to it. Let that sit for a while, and as it thaws out in the water, then you can feed your fish. For bigger fish, you move into your earthworms. You have to cut them up or chop them up, and that way your fish can eat them. Then if you start feeding your fish on flake food when they're young, they will be happy to accept flake food. So for those of you who don't have access to any of the live foods, flake food is a good alternative. It has a lot of the vitamins and the proteins that most fish need to survive. That doesn't mean that they will be as healthy as they could be feeding them off of live foods, but flake food works just fine. So you can do that. There's a lot of different types of flake foods out there. I like to use beef heart, and then I have a high pro growth flake that I use as well. So I try to start my fry off with a little bit of both after they've been eating on microworms and more live foods. You can also feed your killifish on ants. Black ants are okay. Red ants will really bring out the red colors in the killifish. So if you have the small red ants, not the fire ants or the army ants, but the small red ants work really well. Otherwise, you can feed them on black ants. I have them all over out here. I don't know why, but they're here. So they work really well as a live food. So I want to give a shout out to the American Killifish Association. Bob Meyer, I want to thank him. He sent me some books, and one of them that I was looking for was this book right here. If you're a new member to the American Killifish Association, I recommend that you spend the money on this book. You should get one as a, I believe it's online. Once you go to the website, you'll be able to find one online. I wanted a hard copy of it just for doing videos and stuff, also for my own library. This book goes into all sorts of how-tos and what to do and how to raise your fish, how to keep your fish, what kind of substrates to use, what kind of spawning they require, the water hardnesses, the pH of the overall water. Then it goes into talking about live foods. So this is a really good book for beginners who join the American Killifish Association. And then again, once a month you'll get a business newsletter that comes as an email. And then I think it's 4 times a year you get the Journal of the American Killifish Association that has some really good articles, especially if you're a beginner. These are great informational if you like to read in a book. These come out with different stories, different articles. This one, for example, is talking about the convention from 2019. So there's a lot of information in a small book. So if you're not a member of the American Killifish Association, please do check into it, look at it, see if it's something that you'd be interested in. There's just a ton load of guys out there and gals out there that have a lot of information on raising and keeping killifish. These are just some of the basic foods that you can find and be able to feed your fish. So I just want to go ahead and let everybody know that there's more than one way to feed your killifish, and no one way works best for each fish or each person. So what works for me may not on feeding your killifish with the different types of live foods and frozen foods and flake foods. So I also want to thank Paul Pierre. He's been a great help, and he's a book of knowledge when it comes to the live foods. He is an expert on keeping all sorts of different types of live foods. So you could ask him questions about how to raise your live foods, what to expect, how to do it. He's just a book of knowledge. So a shout out to him. And again, thank you, Bob Meyer, for sending the book to me. I appreciate that. And I hope everyone with this coronavirus is having somewhat of an okay time, staying safe and staying at home and protecting yourselves. Spend a lot of time out in your fish rooms and just try to stay safe. So thanks for watching. I hope this helps a lot of the beginners out there with the killifish and what foods to feed them. So y'all have a good day. Thanks for watching.